People Strong, and Cornerstone. The Talent Acquisition Leadership League is an initiative specially designed for talent acquisition leaders to take the recruitment function to the next level of business alignment, and the initiative aims to promote three things: knowledge enhancement, peer level best practice sharing, and upgrading the professional effectiveness of TA professionals. Today's webinar is on the topic of social recruiting and the points of caution and preparation that organizations need to be aware of while rolling out their social recruitment plan. The webinar will cover three topics: conventional versus social media, the focus of social recruiting, and the ROI of social recruiting. To speak about the topic, we have with us Debolina Datta, who is the General Manager Talent Acquisition at United Spirits. Debolina has over 22 years of work experience in HR and sales, and she wears many hats. While she is responsible for talent acquisition at United Spirits, she is also pursuing her FPM industry program at IIM Indore. She is an electrical engineer and a postgraduate in software enterprise management from IIM Bangalore. She has written several articles in renowned business publications such as Harvard Business School and Richard Ivey. Without any further delay, I'll pass it on to Debolina to take over from here. Over to you, Debolina.
Thank you, Vikram, and welcome to all the participants of this webinar. First of all, a huge thanks to People Matter for giving me this opportunity to share my learnings and my experience of social media recruitment. Why I'm suddenly being considered an expert on this is probably because I, looked up a little bit of research on what is being done, so that we move away from a very practitioner approach to a slightly more approach which is grounded in theory and best practice. If we look at what is the difference, today talent acquisition, all of you will agree, there is a war for talent. There is a niche talent pool which all organizations are trying to attract. This is probably synonymous to trying to attract customers in a marketplace. So there are a lot of analogies between marketing principles and talent acquisition principles. And human resources and the HR function and talent acquisition functions have been using marketing principles without probably being very consciously aware about it. Why this is of interest in the social media domain is because social media as such gives us a huge access to a talent pool, where we have people who are viewing jobs, people who are networking, who are researching your organization, following your company. And if you look at the population which is out there, LinkedIn has over 200 million members worldwide, which is a phenomenal database of professionals. Facebook has over 800 million people, and so on. So, this is a phenomenal opportunity for talent acquisition people to, sort of do a niche targeting of their talent. And that's why social media starts becoming very relevant. But then, if you look at social media today, there are plethora of channels, plethora of options that one can get into. So it's very confusing for somebody who's probably looking at using social media for, specifically for today's discussion on recruitment. What do we do? Where all do we do? What all do we do? And then how do we measure our efficiency? These are questions which had essentially bothered me when we started on our social media recruitment journey. So fundamental to that, I think, is understanding that to get onto social media, organizations and HR functions need to have a very clear social media strategy. That has to emanate from what are the objectives, what are the goals that the HR function and the organization as a whole are looking to establish. Once you've defined that very well, then you need to choose your social media channels. Obviously we cannot do everything on all the multiple options which are there, and then we need to look at, what are the methods that we're going to apply, what is the data that we're going to collect from that, what are the metrics that we're going to evaluate, and use this continuously as a, reiterative loop to check, are we getting what we really wanted to get? Now that might sound a lot of hocus pocus, but then fundamentally we need to understand what are the differences between how recruitment used to happen earlier, or even still does, and contrast that with how recruitment happens on the social media platforms. Conventional recruitment is basically all about just demand fulfillment, where we've normally used referrals, job boards, consultants, and earlier a lot of newspaper advertisements. We've always, measured pre and post hire outcomes. We looked at things like, positions filled, time to fill, cost of hire, sourcing cost per channel. I mean, these are essentially metrics of measure which recruitment functions have been using. And all of that has, the HR function has been in control. So talent acquisition decides which all channels to use, which all, what are my metrics of measure and stuff like that. Now, if we start contrasting this with what social media recruitment is all about, the fundamental difference is that, social media gives us opportunity not just to do active demand fulfillment, but also to do a lot of passive engagement and passive recruitment. And that's where, the opportunity to actually build employer brand comes in very strongly. The channels or the stages that one can use for social media, as I've discussed earlier, are, innumerous. And it's actually very confusing for, the common HR practitioner to figure out what all should we do and which all platforms should we get onto. You can do blog sites, you can do Twitter, you can use your own company website pages itself. You can form forum and discussion groups, and then you've already got, the first thing that any HR person thinks about is let's get onto LinkedIn and Facebook. What are the things that we can actually measure? Apart from, the conventional metrics of, how many positions did we fill, what are we looking at through social media? We're essentially looking at, developing a very strong employer brand and a very, very high level of personalized engagement. If you look at what social media research has talked about, the social media has been defined as the production, the consumption, and exchange of information through online social interaction and platforms. This is the research definition of what social media is all about. And quite similar to the marketing principles, what Kotler talks about, the 4 Ps in marketing, Hoffman and Fedor, who wrote a seminal paper on social media ROI, said that there are 4 Cs of social media, which essentially is, your connection, your creation, consumption, and control. And they say that this is the reason why people get onto the social media. They get on to connect with people. They get on to create content. They consume content. And the locus of control is essentially with the individuals. And this is a fundamental shift, a paradigm shift in the way, recruitment has to happen. The control is no longer with the HR function. Social media also allows a very high level of individualization, which is probably not feasible, in a conventional recruitment, which tended to be sort of spray and pray, mass hiring, or you'd send out a job posting, you never know who it's going to hit, who's interested. Whereas there's a lot of contextualization which is possible through social media. Obviously, the talent pools that we're targeting here, there is, the segment itself is completely different. They are extremely internet savvy, having access and who are obviously engaging and active on the social media. And this is not something that, you can do fly by night and say, I'm going to do it on an off basis. Any organization which is looking at getting onto the social media platform has to engage continuously with, the audience, the people who are out on social media. So then when you look at social media recruitment itself and you say that, I'm getting onto social media, but what's my ROI? should we continue to measure by the same old yardsticks of, my sourcing cost per hire, my time to fill? Is that relevant? And what I actually found is that that's not true, and that's not really an appropriate metric, fundamentally because of the complete difference in the shift of how social media recruitment happens. And if you look at social media as a whole, you cannot use it effectively unless you start measuring the ROI. And when we look at ROI, it's all about actually measuring, the methods that you're using, the participation level, and then developing the appropriate metrics in terms of defining, are you getting what you wanted, right? So what I found out is that there are basically 4 reasons why people get onto, why HR functions start adopting the social media. One is what I called as the relationship strategy, and that is basically a high level of personalized engagement. Organizations get onto it to target niche skills, individual talent. So it's like trying to pick that needle out of the haystack. So you want to identify that needle and do it upfront, invest in them, engage them over a period of time, and then bring them on board. And that's basically looking at getting the strategic talent into the organization. The second thing that organizations are using social media very effectively for, and that is for employer branding. You want to make your employment brand as your employer of choice. You want to establish the employer value proposition. So you can use this to basically send out that message to even to your targeted community. Then obviously you don't want to do all of this and not expect some immediate closures or probably even long-term closures, and that's your active recruitment, which is, in which case social media is just another channel, just like a job portal or referrals or consultants. Social media becomes another channel for you to get in and close your active demand. And the last reason why organizations start using social media is, that you could look at it as probably a method to reduce your recruitment costs. Now, one fundamental, difference which sometimes happens is that it's not necessary that you're going to get, organizations are not going to take one or any of these exclusively. It's quite likely that an organization might want to do 2 or 3 of or maybe even all of these options while choosing to get onto social media. But then one needs to be aware that, for instance, if some of them are actually very contrary in terms of the outcomes that you're going to get. For example, if you're looking at cost optimization and you also want to do employer branding, it's probably not going to happen. I mean, one of the two is not going to happen very effectively, for the simple reason, to do employer branding requires huge amount of investment actually on social media. You have to, create content. You have to update content. You have to engage the target audience, and all of that takes, contrary to popular perception, takes a lot of investment and a lot of money. And so it's not just about paying the license fee for LinkedIn or putting up a web page. It's actually constantly updating it, which is actually a very costly proposition. So if you're looking at cost optimization along with employer branding, you might want to be judicious in terms of what is the yardsticks that you're going to be using to measure your efficiencies there. So then let's understand out here, specifically now getting on to, the ROI for each of them. How do I measure the ROI for each? So let's take, relationship strategy, where I'm talking about hiring niche talent. I want to, engage with this talent over a period of time and bring these guys on board over a period of time. So you can use multiple stages, right? I mean, stages is essentially the options through which you can engage with them. You can do, like, for instance, I've said a blog site. It could be even on your company website. Now, for each of these, obviously things like in a relationship strategy, my conventional recruitment metrics are not going to be relevant. So what I've shown here is, an adaptation of the Hoffman and Fedor ROI table. that was relevant actually for the marketing domain in terms of relationship strategy, or rather brand engagement that they talked about. And that's exactly what I've adapted here. And I said for the relationship strategy, if you want to, if you're using your career website, then it's important to measure, how many members you're getting, what are the number of comments you're getting, the time actually spent by people on your website, on your pages. Are you getting responses to polls, your contest survey, and so on and so forth. Now, these are things that you need to start tracking actually, and then look at moving the needle up. If you're using social networks like LinkedIn and Facebook, then it's also about getting in user-generated items. How many posts and reposts and shares are happening of that content? So that's the measure of the engagement that you're getting. Twitter would be the number of followers that you have, and so on and so forth. So this is actually giving you what is your appropriate measure for a relationship strategy, which is akin to brand engagement. The next thing that we get onto is employer branding, and that's similar to brand awareness in the marketing context. And for the same stage and for the same set of channels, there is a different ROI measurement. So if you see now for our Twitter, it's actually just the number of tweets that you're getting. Then it's the number of it's the balance of the tweets. So if you're looking at career pages, then it's the unique visits that you're getting, and and return visits. It's also important to track where are the sources of your traffic coming from. Are they coming from certain other sites? Are they coming from search engines? Because that's going to help you sharpen your, the brand awareness as such that you're looking at. So similarly, you can look at for LinkedIn. It's here we're looking at the number of members and fans, the viral reach, the total reach. The number of reviews and ratings, and the balance of the ratings that you're getting. And there are tools which measure all of this, and which probably make it easier for the HR analytics to happen. And then we have the last two strategies, and since these are conventional recruitment strategies, I'm not going to be talking too much about this, but essentially even keeping the same stages and channels. Now, if you look at active recruitment, we're just talking about positions that you're closing. Probably looking at measuring your funnel. So for the number of job postings, how many joinees did you get from that? How many applicants per job? What was your click ratio? That means how many people actually landed on that page and how many actually applied after landing. The number of hires that you get through this channel as compared to the other channels. Your time to fill, cost to fill. These are your conventional recruitment metrics. And if you're looking at cost optimization, then it's purely and simply, how much money did you put in, and then you compare that with, your other channels. So your basic sourcing cost per hire is the only metrics that you're actually looking at. And if that's the lever that you want to control, then you need to look at where is it that you can optimize on the costs. Now that's all about social media recruitment, and with that, I'm opening up the discussion for questions. Please feel free to post in your questions, and wherever feasible, if I have the answer, I'll be happy to reply to all. Hi, Vikram.
Hello, Devulina. We have a question from Rashi Mahato, and she asks, how important is it to have a social media policy in an organization before social media for recruitment?
The social media policy, Rashi, if I understood your question correctly, is more for the internal employee population, and you can correct me if I'm wrong. So essentially what you're trying to say is that for your employees, what can they talk about, what can they not talk about on the social media platforms, that's probably as important as any other policy or an NDA that any organization would like to put it through their code of conduct. Um, is it absolutely similar to what social media recruitment is all about? Not really, because they're two different things. One is you're talking about employee behavior, and the second one you're talking about the talent acquisition function actually going out and sending out messages to the applicant community or your potential applicant community. So they're two separate things. But yes, to answer your question, I think it's important to have a social media policy in place so that at least people know it's just as relevant as putting up a code of business conduct, and so that people know that what is acceptable and what is not acceptable for them.
Thank you, Devolina. We have another question from Sundar Ramachandran, and Sundar asks, the social media policy is a broad framework, and in fact it's more of a comment from Sundar, who says that since it's a broad framework, the policy should be an enabler for employees to become advocates, which helps the social recruitment.
Yeah, I agree with you, Sundar. Today there are a number of sort of small companies, and I remember engaging with one recently who talked about leveraging the social, media network of employees to, strengthen the referral programs. And so, yes, I agree with you on that.
We are still awaiting questions, so I'd request everyone to send questions. And I think Sundar has a question in fact now. In fact, again, another comment from Sundar who says that often the social media policies is in conflict with the advocacy effort that social recruiting needs.
That's like saying, Sundar, that your code of business conduct is different from what your employees and management is actually practicing. I'm not sure I have a response to that. That sort of incongruence is something best addressed by the organization. But ideally, if you have a social media policy which encourages your employees to be open and transparent, then that's the same message that you're going to be putting out even in your social media messaging for recruitment.
We have a question from Anshu Mukherjee, and Anshu says that in a contracting organization like ours, which is a Shapurji Pelonji group company, wherein 63% of personnel are engineers, though they are active on social media, how important would it be for us to have a dedicated talent acquisition team through social media, especially LinkedIn?
Anshu, if I understood your question correctly, you're talking about putting in, people for social media. See, I think, I'd like you to sort of go back and just think about why do you as an organization want to get onto social media? See, defining the strategy of your social media is fundamental to any organization. Otherwise, you're probably going to be, we made the same mistake essentially, is you jump onto the bandwagon and then, sort of relearn and unlearn a lot of stuff. So be very clear in terms of why do you want to get onto the social media. Do you want to get onto that to engage your existing set of employees? Or do you want to get onto social media to attract niche talent? Do you want to get on to reduce costs? What is it that I've cited 4 reasons why HR functions need to get onto social media for recruitment. So be very clear on why you want to get onto that. So let's say if you want to get on for, basically for a relationship strategy where you're talking about, targeting niche talent. And now obviously in that, when you're putting in somebody who's going to be engaging with a targeted potential hire, it requires a high level of interaction, constant follow-up, and a person who can be responsive. Now, you cannot put somebody in place, or probably, look at having a relationship strategy and then not be responsive to your target talent. So, the methods that you follow have to flow from your strategy. I mean, it might sound a little bit of a jargon here, but essentially the methods will automatically follow, and then the people that you put in out there, the metrics that you define, has to flow from all of that. So if you say that you're going to be having a relationship strategy, you cannot be non-responsive to people who are, sort of tweeting or reaching out to you, or asking questions and looking to engage with you. You just cannot afford to be non-responsive. So that's not going to work. Then your whole thing is going to fall flat. But if you're looking at it for just active recruitment, say I'm going to just use somebody to repost what are my jobs on my applicant tracking system onto my various social media platforms, that doesn't require a high level of effort from any recruiter. Any recruiter could be able to do it itself. So I'm not sure if I replied to your question completely, but it has to, as I said, it has to flow from what is it that you want to achieve from social media.
Devulina, we have a question from Hema Rangaswamy, and Hema asks, what roles are typically hired using the social media by companies now? Is it for niche profiles, senior profiles, or only for mass hiring? Also, for which kind of hiring would social media be more apt?
Hema, that essentially depends on what the organization is. Again, I'm coming back to my earlier statement of what is the strategy that you want to get onto social media for. I know of organizations which are fulfilling generic requirement, large-scale hiring through social media. I know of organizations who are doing campus-level hiring through social media. And then specifically, my organization, we got onto social media essentially for our niche hiring. Having said that, it's not that we do not fulfill a few of our generic positions through social media. We do, but then that was not the main objective. We got onto social media hiring essentially for our, succession planning and, engaging and collaborating with leadership talent at, over a period of time. That was the main objective. Are we doing that? Yes, we are. But does that mean that I'm not getting closures for my other positions? No, not really. I am getting positions, actually, general level positions, in which case my social media is just helping me enhance my reach and close current demand, so it becomes another channel also. But like I said, that was not our main objective. So different organizations would have different objectives based on the challenge that they're facing. So for us, our challenge was we needed to get a succession planning mechanism in place. We cannot, that leadership talent, we cannot onboard until we have, until it's the right time. So we need to just engage with them over a period of time and get them interested. It literally woo them over a period of time, and that was the reason we got onto social media. I hope that answers your question, Hema.
Devulina, we have a question from Sundar Ramachandran, who asks, what sort of maturity have you seen in India enterprises with social recruiting? Sundar also comments that I see traction only in MNCs with an Indian footprint. Your thoughts and comments?
So, Sundar, you're right. I think, this social media today is like the new kid on the block. A lot of people are just sort of jumping onto the bandwagon. And that's similar to saying, okay, let's go climb the Everest. Why do you want to climb the Everest? Because it's there. And that kind of short-sightedness probably will, be a little expensive for HR functions to indulge in. Which all organizations are getting onto social media? Surprisingly, a lot of them are. Today, lesser or more degree, you'll find practically, any mid-sized organization to even large, and a lot of boutique firms also are actually getting onto social media. I mean, I see very interesting um, company pages even up on LinkedIn. So a lot of organizations are getting onto it. But again, like I said, it's about, why do you want to get onto that platform? The most common usage of social media I'm finding is, on LinkedIn, Facebook, and Twitter. That's probably the easiest thing for people to do. But however, there've been interesting usages of blog pages. I know of certain companies which are using their websites creatively, creating contests for their prospective talent pool, and not just multinational companies. So it's happening. It's happening. It's the awareness level has definitely gone up a lot. But I think the organizations and HR functions, professionals need to be a little judicious in how they get onto it and what is it that they really want to achieve out of it.
Devolina, we have a couple of questions on the same topic, so I'm going to club them. One is from Vivek MB and the other one is from Rashik Mahato. Both of them are asking you about some of the downsides or the cons of using social media for recruitment, and any experiences you could share where social media has not worked.
Okay, so downside is probably the messaging that you put out on your social media, as I think Anshu had asked this question, was it has to resonate with what it has to be a true reflection of your organization culture, because otherwise it'll probably come back and bite you in the rear in terms of your organization credibility itself. You cannot control what your own employees will probably say if they feel cynical about the messaging that you're putting out. So that's something that you have to be careful about. And experiences, it's not a bad experience, but it was a learning for me in terms of what are we measuring and are we measuring the right thing. And I'll tell you this little story of what happened. Very blindly we went on to LinkedIn and Facebook, and we said, okay, so the measure of this is basically how many followers am I getting, what's my reach, and I put a recruiter in charge of this, and suddenly overnight I see like close to 1 million followers, and I was wondering what on earth did he do, that we're getting 1 million followers suddenly on our Facebook page, on our Facebook careers page. And then I realized that he had just simply tagged that page onto our, Royal Challenger page and our other brand product pages, which had like a zillion followers. And I realized that that kind of a gaming behavior is probably possible by recruiters, so which makes it important for you to understand what is it that you really want to do. Do you want to just reach out to anybody who's looking at those product pages, or are you actually looking out at your target segment? And that was probably the genesis of where I started doing a little bit of research on this and came out with this paper on social media recruitment. So yeah, you have to be a little careful about what you want to get out there and how are you really going to measure it. Otherwise, you probably might be ending up using social media or measuring the outcomes in a wrong way.
Devolina, we have a question from Sevakami Surya Narayan, who asks, do the recruitment processes in terms of selection criteria need to be different for recruitment through social media?
Ideally not. Hopefully, it's not going to, your benchmark should not change just because somebody is coming in through social media. There is a lot of sort of debate which is there in the West about HR functions actually invading privacy by looking at social media, and that's something that an organization or HR function has to take a call on. For instance, many organizations do background verification, but then that's outsourced to third parties, and there's a standard list of checks that you do through your background verification agency. But if from an HR function, suppose your hiring manager or the recruiter starts building in biases based on comments and posts by the applicant on the social media, that's something that you need to be wary about and see whether that kind of biasing is going to influence your decision making. Or are your selection processes robust enough to that to sort of mitigate that? That's something each organization needs to take a stand on. I mean, where are you going to draw the line? Are you going to look at that to influence your selection method, or are you going to say that no, I'm just going to go with my conventional probably assessments and interview methodology or whatever that you're following for your selection process?
Devina, we have another question from Anshu who asks, do you have any more statistics for ROI for social media for talent acquisition?
Anshu, it took me, I think, a couple of months of research to come up with these ROI metrics, and I'm not even sure whether this has been empirically validated. But I'm saying, these metrics are essentially coming about from the analogy to the marketing metrics, right? Now, there is a seminal paper, as I mentioned, by Hoffman and Fedor from, I think, MIT, which talks about the ROI of social media in marketing domain. And if you look at what I've defined as metrics for social media recruitment, they are essentially an analogy of the same concept in the marketing domain. So where Hoffman and Fedor have talked about engagement, I'm talking about my relationship strategy. Where they've talked about awareness, I'm just talking about employer branding. So are these valid? Is there data? I'm saying data hasn't even been, some organizations are collecting the data. Is the data available in the public domain? I don't think so. And this is where I'd probably encourage, HR practitioners to start looking at, what data they want to collect. And then, let's see how it builds up, because this is just an emerging field right now.
We have a question from Sundari Konar, who asks, recruiting and hiring is really about developing relationships. Relationships require time, trust, and mutual interest. So while setting up a jobs page on Facebook or a company Twitter account may be a great for brand awareness, but how would it help us hire the right person?
Sundari, I completely agree with you. And that's why I said this is, you have to be very careful when you're getting onto this. If you're using social media just for brand awareness and engagement, then, yes, the methods that you follow, the processes that you follow are going to be slightly different. You're going to be putting up content on your pages, on your Facebook, LinkedIn, Twitter pages on stuff which is going to influence your employee value proposition. It's going to communicate your employee value proposition. You're going to talk about stuff that you think your target applicant pool is going to be interested in. If it's just the culture, is it the learning opportunities, is it internal mobility, is it trust, fun at work, what is it that you want to talk about there? That's what you're going to be putting up on your employer branding. When you're looking at engagement of target talent pools or hiring of target talent pools, I'm not saying that that's not possible. That's also, that's very much, the objective. But it requires, people of certain competencies and capabilities to be able to engage with that level of talent and do it on a sustained basis. So you will have somebody who probably from recruitment marketing will be putting up your communication on your social media platforms, and then you'll have a bunch of recruiters who are going to engage with your target target applicant, and just bring them on board as you would do from any other source. You would engage with them, you'd collaborate with them, and bring them, interest them enough into the organization that they come for the interview, and hopefully after that you take it up to a closure.
We have another very interesting question from Sivakami, who asks, what are some of the skills that key executives need to acquire or develop to recruit effectively through the social media?
So, Sivakami, if you're talking about, employer branding, then I'm assuming, you probably have a lot of, marketing or recruitment marketing skills which are required. You'd basically creating content, putting it up. Those are the things that you'd be looking at. If you're looking at somebody who's going to be looking at doing active recruitment, then you definitely need somebody who's very responsive, collaborative, be able to generate the trust and engage your talent pool. Again, an instance which happened with us was as I mentioned initially, we got onto the social media platform essentially for our succession planning, and we had a recruiter who was looking at this and would not respond to the comments and the connection attempts which were being made by the applicants. And so you need somebody who has to be responsive. You need somebody who's going to engage with them and bring them on board. So that competency is clearly required. But then that's required for any recruiter. If you look at it, within your organization, you'll have recruiters who are extremely successful, primarily because they're able to engage talent from whichever channels that they come in. So people who, on the whole, who are a whole lot more responsive and are able to be good brand ambassadors for the organization are the ones who are probably a lot more effective in their recruitment efforts as compared to some other recruiters.
Debulina, I think we are through with the questions. So unless you have any closing comments, should we call this webinar to a close?
Yeah, I'm absolutely fine with it, and I'll just request all the audience and all our HR practitioners who are here attending today. All of us are on this journey of social media recruitment. Some earlier, some a little later, but as one of you all said, that do we have any data? We currently don't have any data, and I'd be really happy if some of you can start collecting this data, and I'd really welcome if you could share that, so that we can really develop some insights about what's working, what's not working, and put out these best practices out for all our peers to learn from. I thank all of you for getting onto this call and giving me such a patient hearing. And do reach out if you have any other issue, any comments, any suggestions, which will help all of us.
Thank you, Debulina, for the wonderful presentation. I'm absolutely certain that everyone like me can carry back one or two very relevant lessons and implement them as an active ingredient of our social recruitment thought process. Ladies and gentlemen, I'd like to thank you all for taking out the time and attending the webinar. As I mentioned earlier, this is part of the webinar series for the TA Leadership League. We will continue our series of webinars on more emerging topics like these, and I look forward to your participation. With this, we've called this webinar to a close. Thank you, everyone, and thank you again, Debulina.